Hi, I'm Paul with Bonstone. Today I am going to talk about adhesives and coloring, matching stone, and trying just the concepts of the materials are used in trying to color match all the resins in the natural stone market. Shout goes out to Ted McFadden with SureShine Network. As far as he's got a network of professionals that go out and do restoration work, and another shout out to MB Stone, who has training classes that help out in all sorts of restoration as far as patching, polishing, surface prep, and everything else. But right now I'm going to be discussing our products and the products that are used in this market. I have been with Bonstone since 1987 and trying to understand the different applications, markets, competitors, products, customers, and there's so much out there, and I'm just trying to give a little taste of what possibly can be used in the market. Now, a lot of guys have their own little techniques, which are great, and I've learned a lot from them, but this is trying to maybe like a new professional or a new contractor that wants to understand a little bit about the products. That is really what I'm trying to do, is just understand the different products that are out there and how to match, color match. First, there's so many products out on the market that you see through different distributors or Amazon or whatever. Now you really want to make sure that you're buying something and working with something and testing it for natural stone, and it works with that. The products I'll be discussing are epoxy, polyesters, vinyl esters, urethanes, polyaspartics, acrylics, and CA glues, which are cyanoacrylates. So first of all, let's really quickly discuss what epoxies are. Epoxies are when you need something that's going to structurally bond the stone together. You would want something that's going to be an epoxy. It's going to last long. It's hard to remove. It's permanent. There's a lot of different brands. A lot of them are generally 2-to-1, 1-to-1. There are other brands too that have 4-to-1s. But in our market, there's generally a 2-to-1 and a 1-to-1 market for the epoxies. You can get those clear or pre-tinted, depending on the packaging. As I'll show right here.
Wait, do it again. There you go.
As you see right here, this is a knife grade epoxy. It's a 2-to-1 mix, 2 parts A to 1 part B. Here's another epoxy system. It's a flowing system. It's 2 parts A to 1 part B. Now, when you get into polyesters and vinyl esters, a lot of what's used to set it off is a peroxide hardener. As you see in this picture here, it's the material part A and then a peroxide hardener with it. It's just really what happens with this is the peroxide hardener sets it off and lets it cure faster, as in a mechanical reaction with the epoxies. And this is pretty popular in the market. You'll see a lot of different versions of this material. It's a little cream hardener that they have that goes with it. Those generally in the same ballpark as a polyester, polyepoxy, vinyl ester, and those are generally used in this market as well. When you get into urethanes, it's a urethane based system for our market, and everybody's got their own little hybrid that they produce with it to make a polyaspartic or any other hybrid blend that they have. So when you're looking at the different adhesives in the market, you're looking at strength wise and durability. Number one, top of the list, is going to be the epoxies. Number two is going to be like an acrylic blend. an MMA blend. And then you go to the urethanes, and then you go to polyesters, polyepoxies, and vinyl esters. That's a little, depending on what market you're working on, interior and exterior, we'll go over that later on which product to use. So, what viscosities are another thing with adhesives. There's generally you got a password. You got time's out. I'll switch it to that picture.
That picture?
Oh. Generally like Vaseline consistency, sometimes like peanut butter as well if it's really super thick for like travertines people are working on. But those are the different viscosities in this market. Packaging, anywhere from a cartridge system, which goes in a caulk gun, or their proprietary caulk guns or cartridge guns, I should say, that dispense the product 2-to-1 or 1-to-1, and even 10-to-1 systems. This is generally goes in a caulk gun. This is a urethane. It's a part A, part B, comes out fully mixed out of the nozzle. You don't have to use the nozzle. Take it off and just punch it out onto a piece of cardboard and do your little mix if it's a little repair or a little chip you have to do. They also make side-by-side cartridges, and you get into the different containers, quartz, plastic, metal, and then tubes as well. As you see here, our glacier is supplied in the tubes. Now, besides the adhesive, what we're going to really be talking about today is the systems used to color the different resins. A lot of the stuff on the market are going to be a liquid tints, as you see here, come in 2-ounce and 8-ounce bottles. These are 10 colors. It's pretty much standard in the market. A lot of these are cool colors, which are the darker colors, and the warmer colors are the lighter ones. Generally, when you're working with the stone market here, you're going to probably use about maybe 6 of these colors, and then not very much of the greens and the green colors, and maybe the bright reds that you get. But I'll go through these with you. But these are the liquid tints. We also sell a lot of the powder tint. It's an iron oxide tint. These tints you can spot and drag and color veins, and they're great for using with the iron oxide tints are great for using with our last patch limestone. As you can see in the picture here, it's a powder, so you can just use a little bit and it's not going to go opaque on you. It's going to be still translucent. Whereas sometimes these liquid tints, just a little bit adding too much liquid's going to go really opaque with you, and it's hard to go back and forth. You have to add more of the part A, which I'll show. The one thing that people should probably go out and get when they're doing color matching for the first time, or if you want to get familiar with a lot of the different colors in the market, is a color wheel. Oh, down here. Is a color wheel. And these work great for when you're doing color matching, or if you're adding the tints. If they're pre-colored in there in the cartridge, this isn't really going to help you because you don't have enough time to apply any tint to your material. But this works great for once you, when you're working with these different materials and you tint it and you're a little bit red and it's too red for you, you go across the color wheel to green, and that's going to cut your red a little bit. It's going to dye it down. Now, during that cutting it, you can add some white to lighten it up, and gray will give it, is your tone. It'll tone it down a little bit, and then black will get the shade for you if you want a darker shade to it. But if you need to kill the red colors too strong, you go across the spectrum here, the color wheel, right here to get the green. Just adding a little bit of green will kill the red. Same thing with all the other colors. Too yellow, you want to do a little blue with it because you don't have a purple color in here, so you're going to want to add a little blue. And sometimes if you need to, you might want to add a little bit of red too to drive that color back. But this wheel works really good in understanding the way colors work when you're doing color matching. As in the description here, you can see the primary hue colors going around: the yellow, the green, orange. We don't have an orange, but you can always make oranges with reds. And to make an orange, you use a red and a yellow. That's how you get your orange color. You go right in between it. It's a cross complementary color. And the blue and the red. So what I want to do here is start working with any kind of system we have. So when you're working with like liquid tints, as I'll show here, let's just say we want to get like a base color inside the stone here, what we're working for. Say a joint here that's going to be like a buff, in between a buff and a white color. Now, we do carry a buff color right away. So if you're going to do like a miter or a seam on this, now this is generally, I'm talking when I'm working with these systems here, it's general for restoration, anybody doing tile work, countertop work, if you're color matching for a seam, a joint, a miter. All this terminology works the same way in understanding the different resins. Since these tints go a long way, you can see this is generally what I'll do when I'm doing a color match. One thing also to remember when you're making up a color for doing a large patch area or a small or a seam, you have to make up enough material to last through, so you don't have to do the whole color match over again. So generally what I do is just grab a little bit of the tint, put it into your part A. You always mix the tint into your part A. If you try mixing part B with the A and then try tinting, you're not going to have enough time. So, starting to get a little bit of your color down for your joint. Now if you want a translucent color, meaning a color that you want some reflection through it, you don't want it opaque, it's going to stick out in something where the crystals are right on the face and you're going to have a lot more reflection to it, and change a color, you're going to want to keep that translucent. And I'll just show you. Generally what you want to do is drag it across, and if you could see it, I will drag it right on some black here too, so you can see that it's still translucent. You can see the black underneath here. So if you need translucency, these are the steps you take to start getting your translucent joint in here. Now if you want to go opaque, you want to add a little more. Some of the solid colors you want to use more tint. See, so it's drowning out that black undertone to it, so you're getting there right now. It's still a little bit translucent, but it's a little bit more opaque. Now if you're in a tight little seam, your color, if it's something that's below surface, it's going to build up the color and you're not going to see through it. Now if it's just a surface patch, it side, and you're going to see underneath it. So just remember, if you're patching in depth like a joint or a patch area, you're going to have a lot more solid color in the middle. It's just going to cover up that middle area. Around the sides you might have some translucency, so if you still need that opaque, you're going to have to really tint it a little bit more. And then when you're working with epoxies and urethanes, and you got a gel system and you're going to add tint to it, again you want to use the part A. And generally epoxies take a lot longer to set up, so you have a lot more time to work with it if your color's still off, and you could still add a little bit more tint later if you need to. When you work with like the urethanes and the vinyl esters and the polyesters, you don't have enough time. You have to get that color on in a mass in the part A first. So here again, I'm just gonna put the color on the side here. And I'm just going to drag a little bit of that color in here. When you're working with some of the different resins, you're already going to have like an amber look to it. It's just part of the resin, the nature of that resin. So a lot of times you have to tint against that amber color or yellow color. It's a little bit more difficult because you have to hide that. Or you go on your color wheel, and where it's yellow, you're going to be adding those colors a little bit more across from the yellow on the color wheel. So this is going to be a pretty translucent color right here. Now if you get to a point like this and it's a little bit too dark for you, or the color is a little stronger, you can always take the part A and this and dilute it and get it back to more of a translucent color. And sometimes when you're tinting, if you're making different batches, say you were going to be doing a patch area and this is your whole mask that you want to use for all the patching, just take a portion of this off onto a different board and do your mix and patching, and you still have your color here that you can drag from. And this is the same sense with this vinyl ester here. Now that's still pretty translucent with this. Now I just put the tint right into the mix, so it's going to go opaque on you. But generally when you're working with a lot of the different colors that you need to add into it, you're going to want to spot these colors on the outside. In a lot of the different the black tints that you get in liquid tints, there is a little bit of blue dye in that tint, so it's gonna fade more toward the blue side. So I'm just going to show. You get a different stick. You might want to get sometimes what you want to do is, if you're doing restoration work and you're working with small amounts, you might want to get like a toothpick or a Q-tip or something to pull in your colors. It helps out quite a bit. So I'm just going to take a little bit of this red brown and mix it in here, and you can see the drastic change just from adding a little bit of the red brown. So that's too red for me, so it's too much on the pink side. So if you go across from the color wheel on that, you're going to add a little bit of green. And some of these colors are stronger than the other colors when you're adding them to the mix, so you have to overcompensate on one versus the other. So it's still just a little bit too red for me. I'm going to add a little bit more. Now I'm going drastic because I want to show you what happens to this. I mean, you can go back and forth all day sometimes with this stuff, but it gets very muddy sometimes. See the colors changing drastically in here. Went from red to green, and now it's starting to come back for a neutral color. So sometimes this matches up pretty well. still on the green. You have to hold it up to different pieces of stone. You can still, oh wow, that's still too green for me. Because sometimes with the lighting, it's going to change on your color.
Show that again. Where, I want to show them where you're matching it. Sorry. Okay. Wait. Yeah. That's where you're matching. So. All right.
So sometimes it looks fine on here with this. But when you hold it up to some of these other colors, you can see that it's a little bit too green.
Yeah.
So since
I'm zoomed in right there.
okay.
I just want, that's where you.
And then, so it's still a little green. So what I'm going to do is just add a hair of brown to it, red brown.
So you're going across from green to this red brown, right?
Yep. Now I'm working on a smaller scale here. Usually when you're in your shop, you have a little more open area to be mixing all this stuff so you can view it a little better. But this is starting to match up pretty good for some of the tones in your stone. When you're working with
Show it back. Sorry.
when you're, you got that?
Yeah.
So as you can see, I'm pulling the colors right here out of this. Now if you were doing a lamination, you're going to have to mix up this color, a lighter color, and a dark one, and then, oops, and then you just pull it through where those veins come through. If you're doing a patch area, your base would be a lighter color, and then you're dragging through this color, and then maybe spotting with another darker color. But it really depends on which area you want to start with on your stone. If you're patching an area like this, or if you're doing a lamination, these are a little more difficult. You have to pull these through the lamination when you're pinching it together. But as you can see, this is how you change. Now, if you said this is too opaque like this is where you'd add more material to it. Another thing too with you know, the vinyl esters and the polyesters is it's 50-to-1 ratio. Usually a golf ball size part A to like a pea size part B. If you want it to set off faster and you're going to add more B to it, it's going to burn the material and it's going to get it darker, like to a yellow. It's going to start yellowing on you. When you get to the epoxies, when you're working in a mass like that, because you're doing a 2-to-1. If you're doing a translucent, just adding the part B is going to slightly change it a little bit more translucent than you're mixing the part A. So you gotta remember that when you're working with the materials. So some of the you know, when you're working with shading and blending, it all depends on where this stone is going to be, interior, exterior. Light's going to be hitting in a sink area. It's going to be a darker bathroom. You almost have to put that into your formula when you make your different colors for this, because if you're working with lighter material outside, the epoxies are going to discolor. If you're patching with it, it's going to discolor. If you're doing a joint with it on lighter stone, it's going to discolor. It's going to yellow up and amber. When you're working with, and that goes the same respects to vinyl esters and polyesters as well, they're going to yellow up in UV. When you get to the urethanes, which are designed for exterior, you're not going to have any discoloration with it. So when you're working with a lot of the lighter materials, you're going to want to stick with a urethane based material, polyaspartic material, because that's going to help you out with UV issues on some of the different stones. I'm not going to get into, you know, which ones are recommended for which particular stones, because it changes so drastically and everybody recommends something different on the market. But when you get into a lot of the light colored, it's just a rule of thumb, you get into the light colored stones, you're going to want something that's going to be UV stable regardless, because it's going to sit out on your A-frame, it's going to hit sun at some point, or if it's coming in a window in a kitchen, you're going to have some discoloration with it. So anything like a beige to going to a little bit darker, you don't have that as much happening. So you can use a lot of tint with that to hide that if you need to. Another thing to use, if you want to use as a thickener, can we pull up that the fillers, the picture of the fillers?
Which one is that?
The granules?
Yeah. Stone dust?
Yeah, stone dust. So we grind up a lot of the granites and marble dust, use as back fillers. So if you're doing a big patch area, it really gives it a little bit more rigidity in the patch. You can also use it as an aesthetic for like flame finish granites. You add it in, use the clear, and you just add a 1 to 1 part granule, and you get a nice color that you can use, and you just use Dremels and different tooling to get the look that you need for it. Now when you're working with like a polished surface, those usually have to be below surface. You're not going to be able to bring those up to a high polish generally, you know, if you're doing a lot of restoration work. So there's different techniques to get that polish to the face. But I want to generally just want to explain that there's different materials out there for adding. I have some other pictures on here too. I don't know if I'll get to those here. Sometimes if you have the piece that broke off, if you're fixing a piece that broke in half, you want to keep that because you can bond it right back together. It's a lot easier to get the look you need for that. As in this picture, this is an exterior. You know, a lot of the working with the different resins, you want to have like when you're doing vertical work or around the bowl in a bathroom or kitchen, you want something that's going to be thick and knife grade so it doesn't run on you. Generally what you want to use is some kind of brace for it to hold it into place or to push it into place. You can get away with using, you know, plexiglass. You can tape up any sticks, tongue depressors with it with packing tape. The resin's not going to stick to that. And also when you're working with horizontal or something you want the product to flow into, that's when you'd use a flowing product. When you get, and I already talked about the UV stability of a product, you want to really try to understand that if something is, the topical or top patch that you have for this is going to be a UV stable product for all light materials. There's real porous materials out there that stain. Generally you want to play around with that a little bit to see what resin is recommended for that application. some of the quartzites and some of the marbles are going to weep in. They're like really sugary just below the surface, and it pulls any resin in there. And if you're cleaning up with acetone or denatured alcohol, it makes it weep right into there, and it gives you a darker line. Sometimes you might have to even use an impregnating sealer to get in there and let that dry, and then use your bonding agent for patching. But as you see here, I will probably go over a little bit more with some of these mixing and try to do some patches for you in just a bit.